Hello and welcome to Running It Back. That's right, I am Patrick Ramirez. This is my show, and I'm really excited about this one. Last week, I talked to comedian Ryan Stout. He is from my hometown of El Paso, Texas, and I'm keeping with the El Paso, Texas hometown theme this week, as you will soon see. But before that, don't forget, see me doing live stand-up comedy Friday, July 16th, 7:30 right here in Southern California at Flappers Comedy Club. Live. What's that even mean anymore, live? Well, that means you can come see. That's what that means. flapperscomedy.com is where you go for tickets, for show info. I'm already looking forward to it. Today on the show, my series of hometown interviews continues. Robert Barrio joins me. Who is Robert? Robert is the owner of Crazy Cat Cyclery in El Paso, Texas. What does Rob mean to me? Well, Rob gave me my very first job at a bike store. Started my cycling industry career, you would say, at age 18. That's where I started. That's where I worked for years until I moved on to other realms of the bike industry. So Rob is a very pivotal person in my cycling career. And as you will see, has insight beyond anybody you would know, I would say. If you know Rob, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know Rob, you're going to love this interview. I went to him. I went to El Paso, Texas. I went to the store, and we just did the interview there. We did the interview in an office behind the showroom. And in classic Rob fashion, I heated up the mics, I hit the recorder, and we just went. And I think I got a full Rob spectrum in this interview. The passion, the ambition, the perspective, it all was in there. As well as I know Rob, there were still several things that I learned from this interview. So if you know him, I think you'll gain a ton about it. If you're new to the show, if you're new to even Crazy Cat Cyclery, his business, you will gain a lot out of this interview as well. I know I did, and I thank Rob for doing it. So, give this a listen. I think you're going to love it. Here is my interview with Robert Barrio.
All good, Patrick.
Okay. Rob, I was thinking about something. There's a few people I have known for 20 plus years that aren't my own family. And you're one of them. There's a couple of friends and you're one of them. I met you when I was a teenager.
You know, it's one of the perks that I've had because I've worked at this shop is to have this generation of friends. And you're like the first generation. And I was telling somebody the other day, like Patrick was one of the first group of guys that came through the shop that went on to their own careers and doing their own thing. And it kind of dawned on me during this pandemic, during COVID, when all of a sudden we started to get another group of people coming into work. And some of them are very, very young. And I kept thinking, wow, how lucky am I to see a second generation and a third generation of employees coming through the shop. And, you know, my hope is to develop that bond and that friendship and to feel like you've made a difference in their lives. And I've got to admit, that's one of the perks that's come with this bike shop. It's been a very rewarding thing to get to know and make friendships and have people like you circle back into my life.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that.
You're the owner of Crazy Cat Cycling. You gave me my very first job in a bike store ever. You started my cycling industry employment. I think it was 18 years old at the time.
And everybody that's come after you has tried to live up to the reputation that you left. No, actually, you know, honestly, I do tell a lot of the young guys about people like you, people like Mario. It was really cool. Like for my 60th birthday, I had a lot of former employees come back and some of them are engineers, some of them are teachers and principals, coaches, whatever. And they came in at closing time and they were helping me bring the bikes in at the end of the day. And it was hilarious to have them look at a bike and go, I worked on that bike 20 years ago, So it was like,
I do that too with like Instagram photos and stuff. Someone will have a bike in the corner that's not in the frame. I'm like, that's a Schwinn Moab. Yeah. I had one of those bikes. I worked on, that was the aluminum one. There was a steel one, and I was a 17 and a half. I'll geek out on people's old bikes all the time.
We had a Gervin Flex Fork come in, and it was like, remember who the first sales rep was? Ray Molina.
The cycling industry is very weird like that. It's very like kind of fluid. You meet lots of people who come and go, and all different kind of walks of cycling interest and ability and stuff.
I think the bicycle industry has really like shown me how small the world is, because I'll run into people who I've had some sort of contact with in the past, and they'll circle back and go, hey, I bought my first bike from you or whatever. People that moved away or came back, people that I have a good friend in Arizona right now, that he's selling real estate there, and he always comes back to the shop. It's sort of like this roost, and they all come back to roost.
You're right. It is weird like that. You always go back to the bike store. You always go to the local bike store and check it out.
And I hope it's something that we never lose. Sometimes I get a little worried as things change in the industry, that the mom and pop shop is aging out, and all of a sudden you have these corporate shops taking over, and you wonder how vested they are in that community. Because to me, the most rewarding thing is to give to the community and then have it all come back at you. So that's been, like I said, the most rewarding thing that I see.
Well, I have a ton of questions. Let me start from the beginning. Let me go way back. When did you get the idea that you wanted to own a bike store? Were you always interested in cycling? Were you interested in opening a business? Where did your love of cycling begin?
I was working construction, and back in the day, I mean, we were like fun pigs, always looking for the next great thing. And I had ridden a bike since I was a kid, been doing some road riding. And then all of a sudden, this whole thing of mountain biking started to catch hold. And
what year was this about?
Late 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And I start getting mountain bikes and I start riding. And what was nice about it was it got you out into nature. And that was really, really fun. And then I'm working construction, and I'm riding bikes down here in Arroyo Park and behind Crazy Cap Mountain. And I start thinking, well, what do I want to do when I'm 50? And I thought, well, I love riding bikes. I want to have something to do with that. And quite honestly, it was a very naive impulse. And I wasn't even thinking of it as a business. When I'd gone to college, I always wound up where you would have a college campus, and there were always bike shops around the college campus.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that here at UTEP. And I thought, God, we need a community bike shop. And I was very, I identified with Crazy Cap Mountain because that's where I rode. And I thought, I want to do something for UTEP, and maybe we can open up this bike shop. And like I said, it was a very naive notion in the beginning, because I thought about having like community tools and a community work area. We actually even considered like trying to open it in a house like Boone's Cyclery in Houston, because I always thought that was such a cool, neat idea where you could feel like you were walking into somebody's home. And it turns out to be a bike shop. Never understood the whole concept behind retail sales. That was a reality that came much later, because it was always about riding the bike and getting more people on bikes. And then the whole idea of retail was something that I had to learn along the way.
Yeah. I was talking to someone once in the industry about bike stores in general. And he says, most businesses open up and they don't have a budget. They don't have a business plan. And the reason they do that is because they open a store because they're passionate about the sport or the activity. And they're not so much business savvy, but they're passionate about it. And that was their foundation of it. So it sounds like you were like more aligned to the same.
I totally agree. And you know, there's this idealism about it sometimes because you feel like cycling can do so many positive things for the world from the health perspective, from an environmental perspective. And I had this really naive notion, like, I'm not going to pay attention to the books. I'm just going to do things. I'm just going to do things right. I'm just going to do things with the right intent. And then as soon as the check started to bounce, it's like, oh, shoot, I better pay attention to the books. I better pay attention to the bank account. And I mean, that's literally how it went down. Like in the beginning, I didn't want to do that. And then I realized, you know what? I better take a couple classes in accounting and business, because at the end of the day, it is the bike business. And you want to have the proper balance between the business end of it and the cycling end of it. The cycling end of it drives it, but the business of it sustains it. And I had a really good conversation because I was always getting in trouble with bicycle suppliers and manufacturers, because I'd go in there with all this passion and my sales reps would like, cool it, Rob, because we're going to go talk to the bean counters, and the bean counters don't want to hear about the passion. They want to hear about the numbers. And that was such good advice. And I remember speaking to an accountant at one of the big bike manufacturers once, and he goes, well, what's your goal, Rob? And I go, I want to be the best bike shop in El Paso. And I know it sounds kind of like being a sellout, but he sat there and said, what you've got to do is be the most profitable bike shop, because if you're the most profitable bike shop, then you have the resources to be the best. Mm-hmm. And that's where the reality of the business end of it came.
Did that strike you as weird? Did you like hearing that? Or was that? Like
no, quite honestly, I didn't like it, but it made sense because, you know, you want to, like I said, you want to take this idealism and say, you know, I'm not doing it for the money. I want to make a decent living doing what I love. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to provide my employees with, you know, a decent living for them. And, you know, the goal was always to get to the point where we could go to some sort of employee-owned model and have some sort of legacy. And that's certainly something that we're closer to trying to implement 25 years later, now that I'm, you know, 61. And so it's like, you've got to start thinking about a succession plan and how you can pass it over. Although the goal has always been to continue to work in the bike shop. I tell people that my objective is to be that little old man that still rides his bike to work, and I'll have a little rocking chair in the corner, and the guys will just tell the customers to be really quiet, not to wake up the old man, because then he starts telling us cycling stories.
Like, who's that? Well, that's the owner.
Yeah. And I'm sure
for him.
I'm sure, you know, I read stories about guys that have been in family businesses that have been in for a long time, and when it comes time to age out, you know, it's a hard reality. And it's a reality that I'm sitting there like coming face to face with. And I've seen like some family businesses get sold to big corporate type entities, and all of them are trying to preserve some sort of legacy. So it feels like you built something and you've made a difference. And that really is what I think drives most people in the industry.
Yeah. Well, you've always struck me as big picture, Rob. Were you always like that? Or did you always have ambitions like that? Was there any ambition besides a bike store? How old were you when you first opened the first opened Crazy Cat?
I was 35. So I was 35.
No ambitions other than the bike store?
No. I mean, there was always this sense of community. I'd come back to El Paso. I love this city. And I realized it's, in a lot of ways, people have to be here to see what a great city it is. And that's something that, you know, having dealt with a lot of people in the industry now, when they come to visit, they really do get this sense of bonding with it. And so my goal had always been to, it's like, I live here. I want to be able to walk down the street and know, hey, this is my home. A lot of people know me. I like to think that they think I've done good things for this community. I, you know, always get involved in some sort of sponsorship and trying to make advocacy at the forefront of what we're trying to do here, you know, whether it's safe routes to school or other programs. You just wish there was some sustainability to all that, you know.
I think that's what people get from you first, is the genuineness in your interest in someone who's walking in for the first time through the store or a longtime customer. You are very genuine, and it shows with everybody you deal with.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a quality that a lot of owners don't have.
I love what I do.
Yeah,
I totally love what I do, and I love coming to work every morning, and I love getting on my bike and feeling like a kid again. That's why I want to continue to have that feeling into my 70s and hopefully into my 80s, you know. And so I believe in the bike, you know, I believe in cycling. I you know, one of the things that when we were doing sponsorship, even if we were doing sponsorship in Mexico, I never really liked doing sponsorship for elite riders. And it was always the kids, because when the kids are involved, it's like there's a genuine love of the sport. They're not doing it for ego or anything. And I love seeing them when they finish a race and just lift their arms in the air and just love it. You know, it's such a great thing to see that. And like I said, I've been very fortunate to see a generation come through and then another generation. And I haven't lost hope. You know, there was a time there where people were talking, oh, kids are on electronics, on iPads or computers, or they're not getting outdoors. And if I saw anything truly positive from the pandemic, it was that it got people outdoors again, riding as a family. And I love seeing that.
Yeah. If there ever was a year for the small business, it was this year.
It's been challenging, Patrick, to tell you the truth, you know, with inventory shortages, and we've had to pivot to try to come up with new ideas on how we're going to generate revenue to stay in business, because a lot of people, I think, took this opportunity to bail, to go, hey, I've had enough. And it really is difficult for me to watch, you know, mom and pop operations bail out and age out. And I certainly don't believe in the corporate model that a lot of bicycle manufacturers are taking, as far as corporately owned retail bike shops.
Yeah. Well, I see you as big picture, Rob, but then right there, that was nuts and bolts, Rob. Let's put A plus B together and figure out how we're going to make it through difficult lean years. You mentioned you enjoyed the kids part of it. What were you like as a kid? I've known you since I was 18. So that was 1998 that I met you. But before all the bike started, what kind of kid were you?
I tell you the truth, Patrick, I have a hard time remembering, you know.
You have two siblings
I have one
order?
brother and four sisters. And so I'm really proud of my parents, because their story is an immigrant story. And so my father came here in the late 50s, early 60s as part of the Bracero program. And
what's that? I don't know that.
The Bracero program was a program to try to get workers out in the fields to pick apples in the Northwest, to pick strawberries in you know, Central California and stuff like that. And so he was such a hard worker, and finally someone sponsored him to stay in the US. And then he brought my mom with 3 kids to California. And so we always worked and lived on farms, and he always worked the fields. And so as a child, I had the freedom to live, you know, on farms with open land and run free. And so, like I said, their story to me is something that I think has gotten lost in this age of Trumpism and where the immigrant seems to be some sort of evil. When I sit there and I think about my father was given this opportunity, he worked hard and he built something. And I think that, there were certainly challenges back then, but as a kid, you don't see them. And so I feel very lucky to have been able to live the life I lived as a child, even though it was that of an immigrant family.
Yeah. I always think the other thing I get from you is work ethic, is the ethic that you have. It's kind of day in, day out. And you're not really, it doesn't, when you're working at something that you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I got something to do. Do you think that's comes from parents? Did you always have a work ethic?
I certainly believe that. And one of the things that I think is I try to look at is that work isn't a dirty word. Work isn't something that should be avoided. And it shouldn't, like, coming to the shop to me isn't work. It's what I do and it's what I love. Yeah. And because I love it, I'm going to be here and do my best every day. Do I get tired? Do I wish I had a day off? Do I wish I had more time to ride my bike? Absolutely, but coming to work isn't something that you avoid. And so I've never understood that mentality, like, how can I work less when what we ought to be striving for is to work at what we love, I guess. And I've been very fortunate in that respect.
Does the independence of being a owner drive you as well? I don't see you working something that you're not the owner of.
I would really, really have a hard time. Yeah. I think that I'd be a great employee, but by the same token, the constraints that, some sort of corporate job or working for the government or something, because it seems that those constraints limit you.
Yeah.
Whereas I
see that more and more in myself from like age 28 on. It's like, I would love to work for myself. That I could get passionate about. Because
then you make your choices.
Yes.
You make your choices and you live with those choices, right or wrong, good or bad. It's like, and you learn from those things. And so I think that if I were to work for a government entity or a big corporation, I think complacency would probably set in for me. It would probably bore me. I don't know. I've never done it. So I don't know.
Never done it?
I don't think so. I don't think
that's
so.
That's impressive.
Well, in college, I worked, as a dishwasher. I guess that's but that was to pay the electric bill,
Yeah.
And stuff like that. You'd take jobs, and I worked construction, but when I worked construction, it was always, as a private contractor where, I was making my own choices.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is still that.
Yeah.
Take me to that very first year Crazy Cat was open. What was that first year like opening a bike store? What year was that?
1995. I probably signed the lease sometime around September, opened in October. It was scary because I was reaching out to vendors, distributors, and no one was taking this seriously because I had no history. Everybody wanted a picture of the bike shop, a copy of a corporate check, and so I bought my first 25 bikes from a retailer up in Santa Fe who in the winter would go to ski equipment.
Oh, so you bought bikes from another bike store?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
The first year, because I had no vendors.
What store was that? Are they still around?
I would think that they're still around. I don't know if I should divulge it. Was there some sort of like
did you send an NDA way back in 95?
Yeah. No, I was thinking it's like, did we just violate some dealer agreement or something,
Right.
But I don't even know if you would remember the brand. It was a brand called Research Dynamics.
No, I don't remember that brand.
Yeah, that was my first line. I bought 25 bikes and I brought them down here to sell. And this day I took them off this retailer's hands. And really what we did was we established a reputation for great service. People would walk in, we'd pump up their tires for them. We'd lube their chains. It's like, and I had a very good friend of mine that worked with me named Michael Griggs. And
I remember
Michael,
Michael Griggs.
yeah, Michael had a huge
He was like the
influence.
bike Zen master.
Yeah,
He was
Michael,
very quiet, very reserved, very knowledgeable.
he has this great philosophy on life, and what he wanted to do was make a difference, as well. And certainly he had a very big influence, especially those first couple of years. And I remember that we kind of developed a reputation for just being great bike techs. And so some of our first clients, who are still clients of ours, came in and were just so impressed with the quality of the work that we did on their bikes that we've known them ever since.
How did you meet Mike Griggs?
We were high school buddies. We went to college together. We were alike in a lot of ways and different in a lot of ways. It was almost like a yin and yang sort of thing. And he's definitely a more cerebral, more intellectual, like philosopher, and I learned a lot from him, and he's still one of my truest friends. He lives up in San Francisco with his wife. He adopted a beautiful little girl from Oaxaca. And
wow,
he's also tried to make a difference while he's on this planet. And, whether it's counseling teenagers or helping the elderly deal with what's coming down the road. He's a guy that's out to do good. And I really gravitate toward people like that.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. I got to work with him like 1 year. I was here. Yeah, it was interesting.
So that would have been like 96 probably, because he was here 95, 96. He was here for 2 years. He had initially committed to sticking around for 4 years, but he was a bit of a wanderer, and then he met his wife.
I see that now. Yeah.
He met his wife at the shop and fell in love, and they moved on, and they're still together. And awesome couple. Anna's a great girl, and she's also a dear friend.
He would strike me as like a guidance counselor, like when I worked with him, because I was a kid and he was probably annoyed that he was stuck with a kid to work with. But he would kind of like have this calming kind of a demeanor over the store, and he would just sort of like do it in his own way. Yeah, he was working on a different mental level.
And
most people.
A lot of people might look at him kind of like a Zen master in a certain respect, and certainly his approach to young people was to hold them accountable, and whereas I love having young people around me because I learn from them, and certainly that's something new that they always show me something new, especially now with high tech and stuff like that.
Yeah,
having young people around is such an advantage.
I'm glad you hit on that. That was one of my questions. I worked at the store, and you hired a lot of young people. There was like people in there as 19-year-old Pat Ramirez. I'd be like, I wouldn't hire this guy. And yet you have young people that have stuck around that are now training the new young people. You did that on purpose?
Yeah. I always look at them as like this blank sheet of paper. And let's write a story together, and let's write a good story. And so I felt like, I always stayed away from people that already had their set ideas and habits, and that I'm not going to be able to have any sort of influence or change, and so with young people, it's like, not that you're going to teach them anything, but it's sort of like a mutual sort of thing. And so I sat there, and I always looked at him as, like I said, this blank sheet of paper, and let's write a good story. Let's figure out what we're going to do. And I still value input like that very much.
When it comes to hiring young people, you went the right way. You could either hire them to work at a bike store, or you could have started a really great cult. you had young people, and they were committed though. You had young people that committed to the store. I was one of them.
I was never really looking for the cult sort of thing, but certainly I love the energy, the enthusiasm, the attitude, and a lot of times, it's just about harnessing that energy in the right direction. And I still have a great deal of affinity toward that because it's like I constantly learn from them, you know, and some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's like, hey, you know, show me a little respect. I've been around enough to see a lot of things, but they do. And they do show respect and I appreciate that. And like I said, one of the things that I truly value and appreciate is how so many of the people that I've worked with circle back.
Yeah.
And some of them, you know, the influence that we've had on the shop has had on their lives has been something that I think I'm really proud of. Well, I know I'm really proud of that.
Well, you talk about the advantage to hiring young people. You talk about the joy of getting kids out on bikes. You never wanted kids?
You know, I was always scared of that. I was always, you know, because all of a sudden
why scared?
Like, because then you have this thing that you have to protect and you have to take care of. And maybe I would, I have this child now that you have to like, you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And whereas most of my employees is, you know, come 7 o'clock, it's like, okay, go home and we go our own way, you know, and it's, and that commitment or that responsibility wasn't there. Whereas raising a family is a huge commitment, which I think would have superseded my commitment to the shop, because at some point your family is more important than your business. And I've never, you know, doubted that. And so I was never really to a point where I could make that commitment. So,
when did you know mentally that's how you separate it? The shop is my family. If I have a family, the shop suffers. Did you know that from the start? Or
I think I got that sense early on because early on it was so wild and free that you develop these bonds. You know, where the first inner bike that I went to was in Anaheim, and Michael and I.
What year was that? When was it in Anaheim?
It had to have been 96. Because I didn't go in 95 and I must have gone to look for a bicycle vendor in 96. And Michael and I were the only two that worked at the shop, and we wanted to drive to Anaheim to try. And I had a game plan. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to meet people and I'm going to, you know, get dealer agreements, but who's going to take care of the shop? And so we had customers who later would become employees volunteer to take care of the shop. And so they ran the shop for those 3 or 4 days that we were gone. And we drove to Anaheim. And I remember walking in and walked into onto the floor. And the first thing that came at me was the Marzocchi girls on a runway. And I was just blown away, like, what is all this?
I was hoping you would tell the story.
No, I walked out because I was overwhelmed. It's like, what is all this? And I walked outside and I tried to regroup. And I'm like, okay, Rob, you're here to take care of business, not this party atmosphere, you know.
I had a similar reaction the very first time I went into a strip club. I went in, I was like, I saw Bachelor Party. I know what goes on. I had very little female experience. I know what goes on. I go in there and I see like naked women. I was like, I need air. I didn't know.
You had to get out for air, huh?
I didn't know they talk to you. I didn't know they sit on your lap. I need air. I can't mentally take this. I had the same experience. It was like,
a little overwhelming. It's a little overwhelming. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I never went back. So yeah, I get that. You kind of like have these ambitions. Yours was in business. Mine was in a strip club. And it sort of hits you really, really hard. I think of the family thing because I don't have kids either. I always wanted kids. My joke is always, I always want one of each, one boy, one girl, one gay one.
Yeah.
I want a family. But then I think like, okay, here's the fun stuff. Now here's the other stuff that's going to go with it. Are you mentally prepared? Are you financially prepared? Because you want to do a good job.
Yeah, I think being a parent is such a huge responsibility, and maybe it intimidated me, you know. And I look around now, and you know, I'm watching this global warming disaster, and you think, God, did I bring my kids into this? You know, and I was a bit of a coward. I was a bit of a
How so?
coward.
What do you mean?
And in that I was scared to bring kids into this world,
Mhm.
and not know where it's going to go,
I
and
see.
so it's to take care of them with everything that's going on, because, and I don't mean to get all serious or anything, but like they say that
Serious wrong.
the worst thing that could happen to a parent is to lose a child.
Mhm.
And that was like, God, I was so like, that's why I feel like such a coward. I would
That
never.
fear's in you,
Oh yeah.
not even having had a kid. Yeah.
Right. But I have those bonds with people in the store, and so you have this sense of wanting to care for them and make sure that they're okay. Yeah. Because it is like a family, and it's interesting. We had a going away party. We had a going away party on Friday for one of the employees here. And he's going off to open a shop in Mexico. And we wish him the best and stuff. And we were on probably our third tequila shot, and he posted something on Instagram that I didn't know about until I saw it. And the caption was "My forever family," and I thought that was so, like, I mean, that really touched me to see that that's how he perceives us.
That is touching, because you are solely responsible for starting that bond, that feeling.
And I hope that he carries that forward. He moves
Right.
that forward. It's like, and carries it to Chihuahua, to the shop that he opens there.
Take me to 1995. You opened the store. What's the state of the cycling industry, or what's the state of mountain biking? Because in 95, I'm just starting to get into cycling, and it's mountain biking. That's the only thing. And mountain biking was almost punk rock at the time. It was fun. It was like out on the dirt, and not that many people do it. Before that, did you have a hard time explaining to friends and family what cycling was? Like,
for sure. I still
do.
Had
that too.
I still do. And a lot of people don't understand how, when you feel this passionate about something, that you would devote so much time to it. And the industry, to me, seems to always go in these cycles, in these peaks and valleys. And road cycling seemed to be on this downward trend. Right. And for a while, there's always something new that comes and saves the bicycle industry. And about 95, it had already been pretty well established, but it was mountain biking. Mountain biking was here to save the cycling industry. And then all of a sudden, you get another valley, and all of a sudden it's endurance bikes. And then now it's gravel bikes. And there's always something that's trying to save the industry, because it's never been just on this steady upward trajectory. I don't believe, it's almost hard to sustain that. Yeah. So we go through our cycles, and I definitely feel like we're going through this reckoning now. Like, what are we going to become? Because I keep bringing it up, but it's scary for me to see mom and pops go away. Mom and pop community bike shops. I would hate.
How so? Do you get scared because you like the idea of mom and pop? Do you think?
I love the idea. I think little community bike shops are an extension of that community. And that's what mom and pop stores are. And that's what makes them unique and different. Not to knock anyone, but, I'd rather have little 5 and dimes in small little towns than Walmarts. And I'd rather have little mom and pop bike shops than, corporate owned, bicycle shops. But that's definitely the trend, because money drives so much of this, Yeah. And I don't
for both. I worked for stores that were independently owned. I worked for one that was owned by a bike company, and it was inherently different. Right. My experience on the micro was, it felt like we were lacking leadership in the corporate. Like, we didn't have a set boss. We were all
structure
employees.
And accountability.
Yeah.
Structure and accountability at the micro level, as you put it, is definitely something that's lacking, because they're all different. And that's why you get chain restaurants, because then you get consistency in how the food tastes or whatever. You can go to any Kentucky Fried Chicken and you know what you're going to get. And maybe that's one of the advantages to corporate bike shops is that you get that that consistency and that accountability and that structure, so that you know you're always going to get this level.
True. Yeah.
The thing about it is that what they lack is that excellence that sometimes comes, like when you score that great little diner somewhere that you know you're not going to get food like that anywhere. And you know,
yeah, it's a good point. I never would put that in terms of a bike store.
Yeah,
you're right.
But that's what we are. We're that small little, you know, diner that is like, and we're mixing. And sometimes our enchiladas don't come out, you know, sometimes they're better than other days, you know.
Sometimes the chef is late to work.
Yes. Or we run out of something and we've got to, you know, adapt and change. And so change the recipe a little bit. So yeah, I know that I'm always looking for those small little restaurants that sometimes they're a miss, but man, when they're a score, they're great.
Yeah.
And that's how I see bike shops. You know, not all small little bike shops are a hit, but we're certainly striving to be that.
What was the very first bike you owned? Do you remember?
I have a little trike. My mom.
Oh, that far back. You can remember that, huh?
Well, I have that because my mom keeps everything. Oh. And so she kept my first little trike and I still have that.
You got to display that somewhere like a retired athlete.
If I can ever take it away from her, I will. And then the other thing, I remember my first ride. We were in California and I lived in Ventura, Oxnard area in a little town called Del Rio, outside of Del Rio on a farm. And my dad put me on this little bike and pointed me down this little rocky hill. Mm-hmm. And he just pushed me down the hill. And I remember my legs. And once I got momentum and once I got balance, it was just the freest feeling that you had. You know, it's like, oh, wow, this is just the best. And never turned my back on it.
What about your first bike store bike? Do you remember that? Your first bike where you thought, like, I got a real bike
I have to confess to one of my greatest sins is that when I was in high school and I worked on my own.
Let me make sure this is recording.
when I was in high school, I worked on my own bikes, but I had very little money. And when I was in college, I had even less. So back in the day when there was no online purchasing, you used to purchase from catalogs. And I was one of those catalog buyers, you know,
really?
and now I looked down at that and I was one of the original sinners, you know.
You were what you hated.
Yes.
We got to the root of your motivation, Rob. You hated yourself.
Yeah.
What was the bike though? Do you remember the brand?
A Motorbacon.
Right.
I had a Motorbacon.
That's right.
Yeah, I had a Motorbacon and I remember always looking to upgrade to Centaur Cyclone derailleurs and stuff like that. And, you know, I got to be a decent mechanic and working on my own bike. And the idea of paying a bike store to work on my bike never crossed my mind because I couldn't afford it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm seeing that independence again.
Yeah, but
honestly, well, why don't I do it?
It was mostly it was mostly that I just couldn't afford to pay anyone. You know, I had to patch the tubes and figure out a way to keep the bike running with whatever scraps I had. And so I can relate to that. And that's the great thing about a community bike shop, that you definitely get guys that can afford the Halo bikes. But then you get the guys that the bicycle is their only mode of transportation, and they're scraping pennies together to keep it running. Mm-hmm. And so I treat those guys with the same amount of reverence.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, you definitely do. You definitely do. The very first bike I ever bought was not from you. And then I owned it for a few months and I got to the realization that I bought a pretty basic bike. It wasn't that great, but it was my first bike. And I brought it into your store and you like complimented. I was like, why is he complimenting? This is a piece of shit. This guy's too nice.
No.
But yeah, I remember you complimented my mongoose. I had a mongoose and you're like, this is pretty nice. I have no, it's not.
I have a story about this gentleman, an older gentleman, probably in his mid 80s. And he used to ride around on a bike collecting aluminum cans and he lived in Juarez. And he'd always come in when he had flat tires. And if we had tubes, spare tubes, we'd give him a tube. We'd fix his bike. And one day I noticed the frame was cracked. And I thought, man, this frame is dangerous. And I told him, it's like, yeah, he goes, this is my only bike. And so I don't know how I wound up with an abandoned bike that was in pretty good shape. I fixed it up. Next time he came in, I said, hey, listen, I have this bike for you so you can ride instead of that one with the broken frame. And he was so grateful. He was so excited. And the next time I saw him, he comes in on his beat up, broken old bike. And I go, dude, where's your nice bike? Where's the bike that's safe to ride? And he goes, that's my dominguera. That's my Sunday bike. That's the one I ride to church. I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was like that bike he held in reverence. That was like a special occasion bike that he would take to church.
Sounds like that guy might be very closely related to my dad. My dad will never spend a dime if he doesn't have to. My dad will have the same pair of shoes resold for 25 years and will be happy about it. And the second you say, hey, you ever think about getting new shoes? Just digs his heels like, what for?
Yeah.
Why? He's insulted at the question.
This guy, his motivation to me was like, hey, this functions, it works. And this is how I go around picking aluminum cans out of trash cans. Yeah. That was his work bike. And the other bike was his Sunday church bike. Yeah.
How weird. Very strange.
There's a lot
of get so many walks of life in the cycling industry, who you work with, and then all the customers you deal with. Is every version. I always tell people the bike is the best thing ever, because say you wanted to play the guitar. You're like, I love the guitar, I love music, I'm going to get a guitar. You can't play a guitar. You have to learn how to play it. You get a bike, you can go out your door and you're riding day one and you're enjoying the sport. You're learning how to go, learning the equipment. You're going places.
And it's all inclusive. It's all inclusive.
Right.
It's all inclusive. Anyone can do it, right. And we certainly have seen the whole spectrum of humanity in the bike shop.
Yes.
And literally it's like, some of it's pretty, some of it's not, but the bike is for everyone. Absolutely.
You told me once that you saw Crazy Cat Cyclery as a service to the community. I don't know if I fully understood what you meant by it at the time. And then my understanding has sort of changed through the years. What does that mean to you? Why did you phrase it like that?
I had this past winter, I had a woman here in the community, in the neighborhood, come in and basically compliment us on what a difference we made for kids in the 10 to 15, 16-year-old range during this pandemic. And she was like, Rob, I can't believe what a difference you made in the quality of their life, to get them outdoors and riding again and to see it flourish. And that's the kind of thing that I think we can make a difference. And I always love to see older people get on bikes again, and people who rediscover fitness and health on a bike. And it's not about necessarily lifting weights, but enjoying the bike and being healthy because of it. And so it's super, super rewarding when someone in the community comes back and basically gives you some feedback about the positive impact that the bicycles had on their life, and by extension, the bicycle shop. Yeah.
I see that now. I see that the store is, from an employee standpoint, providing jobs, knowledge, a career if that employee wants it. And then from the customer side, a healthy activity, a sense of community. All the stores I've worked at, when we have the corporate guy come in or where there's a game plan, it always is build community. It's always, let's get a group going. It's always build community. And that's where it sort of starts from and becomes an extension of the community in a recreation sense. Someone told me also that people communicate differently when they're looking forward. So driving and then bikes, when you're riding in a group, you're looking forward. you somehow are more open or able to communicate differently when you're looking forward
I
instead
agree.
of eye to eye. It's interesting.
I agree with that. And just the sharing of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we've done rides that you've shared with other people, it does develop this bond and all of a sudden this sense of this community that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've never looked at it so much like looking forward, but the fact that we've shared something while moving forward
Mm-hmm.
certainly is something that I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
It gives back.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the years I was at the store. You know, I don't like to talk about myself, but you hired me. I was 18. Number one, why did you hire me? I don't think I knew you that well, but I was like a customer of the store. I loved mountain biking. It was fun. So I was like, if I could work in a store, that would be a way I could learn more about bikes. And this would be something I would be interested in.
Almost everyone that has ever worked in this store
asked why you hired me.
Well, no, not, yeah, no. Almost everyone that's ever worked in this store came in as a customer first. And then you start to see that they love bikes. And then you want that to be part of the bike shop. And so it can start by, hey, I need to fix my flat. Well, they're the tools, fix it yourself. And then you start to pay attention to the people who really delve into that and really want to learn and want to become that bike technician or want to know more about their bike. And if you have the passion for it, I kind of like sense it. And then it's like, why wouldn't you want to be a part of this team? And I don't know if you remember this. I have a textbook where this textbook for one of the public schools did a story on opening up a small business, and they highlighted our bike shop.
Oh yes, I do remember this.
And there's a picture of you, with your bike tech apron.
Right, I gotta find that picture.
I have it.
I remember.
My mom has it because she has all those pictures.
You gotta send me that picture.
I will absolutely send it to you. And it's interesting because in that picture you're showing a couple bikes to a couple kids, Miles and Mason, who were maybe like 10 and 12, 8 and 12, something like that. And what I find fascinating about that picture is that they grew up to work in the bike shop too.
Really?
Yes. Miles and Mason are in that picture. You're showing them a bike. And when they got a little older and loved cycling, they came to work at the shop too.
I gotta see that picture.
Yeah, wait till you see it. It's awesome. And then there's a group ride with us, riding our road bikes on Scenic Drive, and there's a little story, and that story was in textbooks for fifth graders, sixth graders, or whatever. And I thought that it was a really interesting thing that you're part of. A part of as well.
For me, working in the bike store was my identity. It was my interest in cycling, and it was growing all the time. I was learning about the mechanics. I was learning about I love learning about new product because I felt like we were on the front lines. When new stuff came, we learned about it first.
Young guys are always on the front lines. That's why I love them. I'm okay with V brakes. Why does everybody want hydraulics?
You had the funniest line that I would repeat to other employees all the time. Drivetrains were going from 8-speed to 9-speed, and everybody was pissed. Everybody's like, why do we need 9-speed? The chain's thinner. It's going to break. They just want us to buy more stuff. I like 8-speed. Let's stick with 8-speed. And you went, hey, guys, I got news for you. I was fine with 7-speed. And it was kind of like, new school. But guess what? It's going to go to 10-speed. It's going to go, just be ready.
11-speed, 12-speed. And it's great. Like I said, that's one of the things about young people because they're on the cutting edge. Whereas as you get older, you get a little complacent and you're fine with 5-speed or 6-speed or 7-speed. You've got to be open to change. And that's where I think, young minds are really open to that.
Industry long enough, you just know where this road goes. Technology will improve and just
you start to understand the 5-year R&D cycle. They're going to invest in something. They're going to develop it. They're going to, get their rate of return on it for 5 years and then move on to something else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We've seen it so many times now that, it's coming.
You shut us all down. You're like, guys, I was fine with 7-speed. I had no problem with the generation before.
Yeah, that's only because I'm older.
Well, the store was my identity because cycling was unique. And that was my thing to talk to people about. It's like, oh, this is what I do. this is my enjoyment. And I go to bike races and I work at the store. And then you would because I went away to college, and you would let me come back and work in the summer. All summer, all school year long, I was like, summer, I go back to work. I go back to work at the store. That's what I like doing. And I tell people, one of my favorite memories is kind of a moment where you're completely in the moment. Is the NBA finals was starting that day. I worked at the store till 7. This game started like 7:15. And I thought, all right, store closes at 7. I'm jumping on my bike. I'm hauling ass home on my road bike, and I can make the tip off. And I get home, and my dad is grilling food on the grill. My brother's watching. We all just sit down. Just one of my favorite moments. I'm just going to ride home from work. I finished a work day. I get to go home and watch basketball with my dad and brother and look at it. Food's ready to go. It's one of my favorite moments. In a bike, or just family and life in general, just completely in the moment. This is what I want to do.
And there's so many instances where we just stay in the shop and watch the game, you know, lock the doors and let's watch the game.
That too. Yeah.
You know, it's like we've been doing that recently because the playoffs are in full swing right now. Yeah. I mean, the bike shop becomes a part of you, and good or bad, it is my identity. And I'm probably one of the most boring people at parties because everybody wants to talk about art and music, and really the only thing I talk about are bikes.
You think so? Really? I don't get that from you at all.
I don't know. I sense that like it's the only thing that I'm really knowledgeable about, the only thing that I really like care about or passionate about and believe in. And so, you know, a lot of time, maybe when they start talking about, you know, their investments and stuff is when I start to zone out, because it's like, you know, the bike shop, like you said, it's my identity for sure. I can't see, you know, and like I said, good or bad, it's what I am. And some people might say, oh, well, you're a workaholic and you let the job take you over. And there may be an element of truth to that, but it's something that I truly love. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get you as being single dimension like that. Tell me if I'm wrong. You always had knowledge of music, sports, and movies.
Yeah. And quite honestly, I get a lot of that knowledge from the young guys that work here. It's like, so which basketball team are we going for? You know, it's or whatever. It's like, I mean, it can be all consuming to be in here because, you know, you're already like this is July 6th, and I'm already thinking about model year 2022 and what we're going to do to try to optimize our experience in the store this coming year. And so I've been through this cycle so many times that I know there's tasks before us now to prepare for what's coming down the road. And it is all consuming, the shop, but I'm okay with it. You know, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It seems like, you know the game, you know your place, and you know a strategy for everything. Or do you still have fears in the?
Oh, for sure. If there's one constant, and it's not just in the bike shop, but in life, is that things are always changing, and you cannot just get comfortable and think that everything is going to be the same next year. You know, I think I just saw something about Tom Brady where he said something like, yeah, last year was a great experience winning the Super Bowl, but we can't fall into this thing that it's going to be the same next year because it's going to be totally different. And so you can be successful in the bike industry this year, and you can't continue to do things in the same way. You have to be ready to do things differently and adapt and change, because that's the one constant.
Yeah, ambitious, Rob. Well, I think it's
survival, Rob. It's survival, Rob, because it's what you've got to do to survive. You know?
Yeah. I was reading the Mike Senior autobiography, the owner of Specialized, and it seems he was this hippie guy turned capitalist, and he's constantly trying to strike the balance of it. It seems like there's a lot of that in you too. There's a lot of big picture. How do we get there? Here's the nuts and bolts. Now let's look ahead. You did give us, the employees, a razzing once in a meeting where you say, guys, I don't have to be here. I can do other things. The store is here for you, so you need to do your job. So I think there is still that nuts and bolts Rob, where here's the job. We need to end up being more plus than minus at the end of the day.
Right. And I think there's a lot of people in the bike industry that are a lot like Sinyard. I think it attracts that type of person, that there's the hippie idealist, and then you come to the realization that, there's that this is about capitalism, and it's not evil to make money. Unless you make money like Jeff Bezos, because that's evil to me. That kind of wealth is just obscene. And there is.
So you don't want to have a crazy cat Amazon where we all go online and you ship us stuff?
No, I don't.
2 days.
And I hope someday that pendulum swings away from that, because I think that that's something that isn't necessarily what's best for the human spirit or the human soul. That's not what this is about. It shouldn't be about that, about having so much wealth like that. But there are people I'm sure that'll argue with me about that and say, capitalism is go out there and make as much as you can. I'd like to think, and I don't believe that I'm a socialist, but I'd like to believe that you can be a capitalist with a conscience and try to give back. Jeff Bezos' ex is giving back a lot, but I don't see him giving back a lot.
Jeff Bezos' ex, the title of her autobiography.
And I don't mean to get on his case, but I recently saw that he was going to be one of the first guys to get launched into space.
Yeah.
And there was a petition that like 40,000 people already signed.
Okay, that is the show, everybody. I want to thank Robert Barrio for joining me. The man.
I hope he doesn't come after me now.
The face behind the store. The man behind the counter. With a motor baton. And the man who gave me my very first job at a bike store. I want to thank him for doing the interview. Hey, if anybody knows
I just
Robert,
that,
know what he's
really
about,
believe,
and I still
there's
think there was things to learn
spiritual
about him
side to,
from
like,
that
wanting to
interview.
help others.
So I appreciate
share with
everyone
others,
listening. I appreciate Robert taking the time
having so
to
much
let me
like
interview
that. I
him.
think you see that a lot in the industry.
And if anybody was
that there are
already a
people
customer of
who are-
Crazy Cat Cycling,
and that's what community
you
is,
know what
right?
a passionate man
You're
he
thinking about
is. And if
everybody
you
else
don't,
that you
go into the store,
share this
find out for
experience
yourself.
that you live with.
It's all there.
And they're my neighbors.
Don't forget,
my brothers,
everyone,
my sisters,
July
my
16th,
employees.
7:30
I
in
love the bonds
Burbank,
that we've
California.
developed,
Flappers Comedy Club
they are
and
so much
Restaurant.
more
See
valuable to
me,
than any
your
number in the
favorite,
bank account.
Patrick Ramirez, doing
That's
live
great. I like
stand-up
that.
comedy.
With a conscience.
That's right. You
Yeah,
can see it.
I'd like to
Flappers
think that
Comedy.
really well.
I hope
Dot
there's more
com
people out
is the
there that
website.
can start thinking like that. And
Go
say,
see it.
Hey,
Be part of the scene, man.
Let's try to do
Yeah, you'll love
something
it.
for those that
If
have
you like the
less.
podcast, if you like the show, if you like the
You know,
YouTube
and-
channel,
and
give it a
certainly,
like.
when we
give it a
sit here,
subscribe.
again, not
I
meaning
will
to get all
hate you for
political,
it.
but when
I'll
you think about all
love you
these
for it.
immigrants that are coming
Thank
to
you,
the
everybody,
US,
for listening.
at the end of the day,
and I
the
will
reason
see
they're
you soon.
coming to the US is because they have less
Mhm.
and they need more. And we have more than enough for ourselves.
Mhm.
Well, you certainly provided a lot for me. You gave me my first job in the cycling industry, and I never left. I worked at many stores after. I always stayed in the industry.
And one of the things that I think you need to keep in mind is that you gave back a lot, because
What was that exactly?
first of all, this friendship and this bond that we've developed,
Definitely.
and I tell people about you all the time. Not just you, but other people.
No, you could have ended with
Matt
just me.
Izquierdo, who, when he went out and got
Right,
a
former
real
employee.
job, a former employee, and wrote me this beautiful letter about, hey, Rob, a lot of the things that you taught me in the bike shop, I utilize in my career now. And so that sense of satisfaction is a gift that you and other employees like you have shared with me. And I value that more than anything in the world. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
You provided me my first job in a bike store. I'm proud that you're my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for talking to me.
You bet.
Okay, that is the show, everybody. I want to thank Robert Barrio for joining me. The man, the face behind the store, the man behind the counter, and the man who gave me my very first job at a bike store. I want to thank him for doing the interview. Hey, if anybody knows Robert, you know what he's about, and I still think there was things to learn about him from that interview. So I appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate Robert taking the time to let me interview him. And if anybody was already a customer of Crazy Cat Cyclery, you know what a passionate man he is. And if you don't, go into the store. Find out for yourself. It's all there. Don't forget, everyone, July 16th, 7:30 in Burbank, California, Flappers Comedy Club and Restaurant. See me, your favorite, Patrick Ramirez, doing live stand-up comedy. That's right, you can see it. FlappersComedy.com is the website. Go see it. Be part of the scene, man. Yeah, you'll love it. If you like the podcast, if you like the show, if you like the YouTube channel, give it a like, give it a subscribe. I won't hate you for it. I'll love you for it. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will see you soon.